Hello, everybody. My name is Jeremy, and welcome back to the Kanto region, here once again in Viridian City. This week, we have a pretty action-packed episode, lots to happen, a lot of development. We finish off a huge chunk of the city and really set the stage for the last couple of these. We are a little bit overshooting my timeline projection for the project. I'd really hoped to be done. I mean, I already said this in Pallet Town. I had wished to be done with that one in 5 episodes. It ended up taking about 6.5. This one I had hoped to be done with in 6 episodes. It's looking more like it's going to be 7 or 8, but we're coming along pretty nicely, and I'm feeling really good about where things are going. I'm kind of continuing on with my approach that I had discussed in the previous episode of doing some of the more generic building off camera. This episode ends up actually having more of it than I had maybe intended, but I kind of justify it to myself with how fun and detailed the main build of this episode is. And the main build of this episode is, of course, from the title and description of the episode, the traffic school. But we'll get to that in a little bit, because right now the first thing that we're working on is finishing off this kind of central park that we have going kind of right next to the train station. I had said when I first set it up that it's kind of occupying the space that once had been occupied by some train tracks. I've decided that what used to be here was like a pretty significant rail yard, and whether it was an industrial rail yard or a passenger rail yard is, I guess, up to you to decide. I can go either way, depending on the time of day, I suppose. But either way, it used to be a rail yard. It stopped being needed by the city, so they replaced it with this big, beautiful park. And I like the way this park came out. I think it's pretty neat. I don't know that I necessarily achieved exactly what I was going for with it. I wouldn't say that 100% you could look at it and tell that it used to be train tracks. That maybe that didn't come straight through. But either way, I'm happy with the way that it looks. I'm happy with what it adds to the city, and that's just going to be enough for me, I think. Let me know what you think. Would you be able to tell that it was train tracks? I'm going to say probably no. And anyway, we're over here kind of in this little corner, setting up a little parking lot for the train, for the park. And I don't think it's sufficient parking, and as I've stated in other episodes, I don't think that I'm providing sufficient parking for much of anything in this city, but that's okay. We've got a bus service, and pretty much everything is pretty close together, so that's just all right with me. We still don't actually have the bus lines running just yet. I haven't gotten around to setting those up. Maybe in kind of like the final wrap-up episode, I'll set the bus lines, because by then I'll have kind of a more complete picture of what the city looks like and where it needs the service, where it makes sense to have the service, and all that stuff that you need to consider in your bus lines. Over here, I'm kind of continuing on with a theme that I had, set a little bit earlier, of these sort of like statues and general kind of like artsy vibe of this park. I decided to set up this bike path with a bit of a, just kind of like an abstract artsy sculpture tunnel. As a cyclist myself, I feel like this would be super fun to ride through. I think it would be pretty cool. A nice little visual, probably a good place to take pictures if I had to. And now we have this kind of interesting little predicament of, the way that these paths are going to meet the road. I couldn't really figure out any other way to do this, so I decided to just use some ploppable asphalt and figure out the lines as they would continue from the bike path and just call it a day. It's in the spirit of forgiving myself for places that are a little bit lesser in detail. this project needs to move along, and I can't spend all day trying to figure that out. So that's kind of where we leave it. I think it looks good enough, especially when it's surrounded by all the other stuff that'll be in the neighborhood. I think it comes together just fine. And now down here, I'm continuing a bit of the design that I had done in the Pallet Town episodes of how I want the river's edge to look when it's not keyed off. I've decided that past this little red bridge, we're just going back to the regular natural river. I feel like that makes some sense, that it doesn't continue on all cemented up forever. At some point, it does have to kind of just get, a little bit more natural. So that's going to be it from this point on, and it looks a little bit busy, I feel, a little bit messy, but I guess that's kind of how rivers really look in Japan. So, I'm okay with it. It's maybe a little wider than I'd like it to be at this point, but I can't really figure out the water mechanics of this game. I've been playing this game for, 6-7 years now. I've been making videos for 3 or 4 years, and I still wouldn't say that I've mastered the water mechanics. I feel probably about as confused by them as I was the first time I played the game. And that's unfortunate, but I think at this point, we're just going to say that's just how it's going to be for the rest of my time with this game, however much time that ends up being. Now over here, just to kind of continue on with the, train track theme, I kind of put this really long warehouse that is angled against the park in such a way that would suggest that this maybe used to be some sort of a maintenance shed for trains that now is just kind of a general purpose warehouse kind of over here at the edge of the park. I don't have any sort of grand ambition for what it is these days. It maybe even is just abandoned. Who knows? Now over here, we're getting into the meat of the episode. This is one of my favorite little projects that I've ever done in this game, actually. This is a traffic school where young people go to learn to drive. And I guess I don't know how licensing works in Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if, adults have to renew their license and go take driving tests again. So this is something that you see a lot in Japan. Every city that I've looked at on Google Earth seems to have at least one, maybe multiple, of these driving schools. And it's just really neat. It's a really interesting thing to look at, because here in the United States, we don't really have stuff like this. We have driving school. I took driver's ed, but I took it in the gymnasium at my high school. I did not go to a specialty place like this. My road test was just on a regular road. They just took me out into, the regular old road with civilians all over the place and said, okay, show me you know how to do a 3-point turn. And I feel like this is probably a better way to do it, if I had to guess. It's nice that there's kind of a segregated little place that you go to learn how to drive and test your skills. If you're a drummer, you go to a studio to learn how to play. You don't go to gigs right away and subject people to your horrible playing. But that's neither here nor there. Just trying to make this a little bit distinct from the roads around it, so I made the asphalt a different color. I didn't connect it to anything, so no cars are driving on it. I think I might try to come back and do some sort of bus trickery just to get somebody driving around it, but I don't really think it's not that important to me. I think when you look at it kind of as a whole piece, you get the idea. You understand kind of what's going on here. And otherwise, I'm going around and doing a lot of detailing of traffic markings and different scenarios that a driver would come across. We've got like a little stop sign over here. There's a couple of different types of intersections. This really super sharp turn that I don't know how often you'd encounter that in real life, but I saw it in a real Japanese traffic school, so I decided to copy it. It looks pretty cool anyway. And then I'm just kind of closing it all in with tiny hedges, as I am wont to do. I just think it makes it look a little bit cleaner in the end, makes it, again, kind of look a little bit faker, which is kind of what we're going for here. We want this to look like it is a setup because it is. And otherwise, I have this little roundabout. I thought about trying to put some sort of a sculpture or a fountain in the middle of it and decided to just put these traffic cones instead. And surrounding the whole thing with safety barriers so that none of the young drivers end up careening off the side into general traffic or into the trees that are going to be on the side and hurting themselves or other people. And that's most of it for the road segment of this. There is some surrounding detailing that will happen shortly, but just overall, I feel really good about this, especially when you see it zoomed out. It stands out in a really nice way, and I think I definitely achieved something pretty fun here. There is a ready-made traffic school asset on the workshop. I mean, heck, I might even have it in my collection. I'm not 100% sure whether or not I do, but I had this like interesting amount of space here to work with, and I'm trying to find just kind of like distinctive projects to mix things up a little bit in this city because, Viridian City, kind of a big part of what I'm going for with it is just a nondescript Japanese city, right? I'm kind of going for something fairly generic and, not with a ton of unique personality to it, just as kind of, a nod to the way that Viridian City kind of is in the game. So I need projects like this to kind of loosen me up a little bit and, keep things a little bit spicy, if you will. And now we're kind of off on the edge here. It's kind of built into the side of a hill like everything else in this city is. So I'm kind of just filling in this one little corner, struggling with the ploppable grass. I really just don't know what the rules are in regards to those weird glitchy shadows that you get. And I decided to just put some solar panels here just as a little bit of a space filler, I guess. But it's the driving school that I took inspiration from in Aomori, there is just kind of like a little solar array right next to it. So that's kind of what I was taking inspiration from in that regard. So now over here we have the tunnel for the train leading out of town, out towards Pewter City. And I just needed to do something to it just to make the tunnel a little bit more set into the environment. I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I find myself frequently feeling as though the tunnels that are generated in the game just never really quite work for me. I mean, this is a custom asset, so it is obviously quite a bit better than what the base game would be offering me, but I don't know, there's something about just like a big white block in the middle of the city that just like doesn't quite do it for me. So I needed to zhuzh it up a little bit. So I decided to kind of wall it in as it is seen here, and then kind of put a little shopping center on top of it. And it ends up fitting just really delightfully here. It's a nice fit. It makes sense. It's exactly what I was looking for in this space, and it makes it blend in so perfectly, and no longer looks like just kind of a sore thumb sticking out into the middle of this neighborhood. And otherwise, just kind of surrounding it with some fences, just for safety purposes, putting a couple of trees and some hedges, and that's about it for this shopping center. I'm pretty happy with the outcome, I feel. And now over here, this is something that I keep meaning to do, and then I never do, where I put a lot of roads right next to the rivers, and you do see some of that in Japan, but a lot of times you see houses where the back of the house just butts right up against the water. So I wanted to make sure that I had some representation of that at least. So just putting some really nice narrow one-unit buildings kind of right up against the river like this. and keeping it pretty simple in terms of detailing. I'm not trying to do individual backyards here. That's just going to be a level of detail that is not in the purview of the Viridian City project. So instead, I'm just kind of putting these little retaining walls to kind of suggest where the edge of their properties are, and filling it in with some grass and some more civilian-looking trees. I guess I don't really have a term for this idea, but basically, like, I have kind of what I would call generic trees, which go, all over the place, right? The big pine trees and the big bushes and the hedges and things that I mean to use as sort of an indication that, this is more of a natural place, or this is just kind of how the trees were already when this building was built. And then I have these kind of smaller ones, the flowering ones, that I intend to kind of suggest, like, this is somebody's property that's being maintained. This is something that somebody cares about and that they planted on their own. And now we have kind of a little bit of a space behind all these houses next to the traffic school. And, it's just like a bit too big for single-family houses. This is something that I'm coming up against a lot, where I just kind of keep making blocks too big, and I have to kind of deal with that somehow. And, you look around Japan on Google Earth, and you don't really see a lot of very big properties in the cities. You just kind of see a lot of houses really right up against one another. They have like a little bit of separation in between them side to side, but in the back, it's like a really narrow fit. Nobody really seems to have significant backyards anywhere. So I need to kind of start adjusting the way that I'm planning my road networks in order to make that make a little bit more sense. But for now, I just have this kind of big space back here, so I decided to put some retail. There's a restaurant, a gas station, and a pachinko parlor, which there's actually quite a few pachinko parlors around this city. I haven't really called attention to it ever, but it's something that I'm really consciously doing as a result of the lore in the game and in the show and whatnot, of Giovanni being the gym leader here. And Giovanni, of course, as we all know, is the mafia don of Team Rocket. So I kind of figured that, kind of one of the many flavors of Viridian City is is vice, right? So there are a lot of gambling parlors around that felt like it would make some sense with the Team Rocket presence. And now I'm just kind of doing some last detailing here, setting in this little restaurant into the block with a little bit of a planter and a flowering tree, filling in this little back area. And then this is the last thing of the episode. It's something that I've needed to do for a while and haven't quite yet. This is just kind of a nice big housing block. It seems like it's just kind of like, I don't know, some sort of public housing or something like that. It's something that you see a lot around the outskirts of cities in Japan, but you see them in the inner cities too. Just kind of like one big open space with a couple of somewhat, medium to large apartment buildings. So that's what we're doing here. And otherwise just kind of like fiddling with these paths to make them meet up with the road nicely and sit flush with the buildings and whatnot. And this is it for the episode. This is the end. Thank you so much for watching my show. Thanks for spending your Friday with me, or whatever day it is that you're watching this. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. If you want early access to episodes, you can become a channel member for $5 a month. You get early access to episodes. There's always a lot of them up there. I try to keep a good, healthy amount. I'm not making any promises about how many. If you want to do a one-time donation, check out my Buy Me a Coffee link. Find me on Twitter @JeremyThunder. Check out my podcast, Generation Loss, and I'll see you next time.